That open door you were trained to keep is destroying you, not slowly, not gently. It is bleeding you of hours, money, and standing every single day, and the people walking through it have no reason on earth to tell you that. You have a family member who calls it closeness. You have a friend who calls it loyalty. You have a colleague who calls it being a team player. 3 different people, 3 different words, 1 identical arrangement. A man with no perimeter, who was raised to feel like the villain the second he reaches for the lock. Hear this as a diagnosis, not a complaint. There is no lock on the door to you, and you were taught your entire life that the missing lock is the thing that makes you good. It was never goodness. It was access. And the guilt you feel the first time you finally close it is not your conscience speaking. It is the alarm system installed by every person who profits from the door staying open. Somebody trained you to leave it unlocked. This video is going to show you who and what it has cost you, and how a man closes it for good. So, let me ask you the question nobody in your life has any incentive to ask. If you stopped giving tomorrow, stopped answering, stopped driving across the city, stopped absorbing the crises that were never yours, how many of the people who call you close would still be standing in the room a year from now? Sit with the number you just landed on, because that number is not a measure of how loved you are. It is a measure of how much of what you call love is actually just the sound of a door that does not lock. What follows is 7 rules, 7 hinges, each one a piece of the door you have never been allowed to close. By the end, you will know who trained you to leave it open, exactly what it has cost you, and how to shut it without a single word of explanation. The 7th rule is the one that costs, the one that separates the men who talk about closing the door from the men who actually close it. I am going to make you wait for it, because you are not ready for it yet. By the time we arrive, you will be, but before any of that, a filter, because the 7 rules that follow are a weapon, and I will not hand a weapon to the wrong man. If you are the kind of man who wants his own no respected to the letter, but cannot sit still for 30 seconds when a no is pointed back at you, if the boundary is sacred when it is yours and an insult when it is aimed at you, then close this video now. It will only make you a more efficient version of the problem you already are. The rules that follow are not for the man who wants armor around himself and a master key into everyone else. That man is not strong. He is appetite with better branding. He wants the wall and the door, the perimeter and the trespass, his refusals honored and everyone else's overrun. There is a word for a man like that, and the word is not powerful. The word is weak, too weak to hear no, and calling the weakness strength. This video is for the man who can hold a perimeter and honor one, who can close his own door and respect the closed door of another man without it costing him his composure. If you cannot pass that test, the rest of this is wasted on you. If you can, then you are exactly the man these rules were built for, and we begin. Start with something older than your family, older than your job, older than the culture that trained you. Watch any animal that has survived long enough to be worth studying, and you will not find a single one that defends its territory by explaining itself. The wolf does not justify the edge of its range. The big cat does not apologize for the boundary of its ground. The territory is marked once, quietly, in a language the other animals already understand, and then it is held. No negotiation, no speech, no second-guessing at 3 in the morning about whether holding the line made it the bad guy. The animals that survive are the ones that treat the perimeter as a fact, not a request. Somewhere between the den and the open plan office, you were taught to treat yours as a request and you have been waiting for permission ever since. That waiting has a cost, and the cost compounds. Every time you say yes when the honest answer was no, you are not being generous. You are teaching a specific person, in a specific moment, that the door opens when they push. They file it. They do not file it cruelly. Most of them are not cruel. They file it the way water files the shape of a riverbank, without intention, just by flowing through the same gap every time until the gap becomes the channel. The family member who calls at the third ring, the friend whose car has broken down again, the colleague who knows your hours will carry his name. None of them sat down and plotted against you. They simply learned the shape of the opening, and water always returns to the channel it has already cut. And here is the part that breaks men when they finally see it. The guilt you feel when you try to close the door is not a signal that you are doing something wrong. It is a signal that the arrangement is working exactly as it was designed to. Think of guilt as a collection agency. A collection agency does not call you about debts you have already settled. It calls about the accounts the lender still believes are open. The guilt arrives in precise proportion to how reliably you used to pay, which means you feel the most guilt, refusing the exact people who have extracted from you the longest, your oldest friend, your closest family, the colleague you have covered for years. The intensity of the guilt is not measuring your wrongdoing, it is measuring their expectation. And their expectation was built, one yes at a time, by you. Stay with that, because it inverts everything you have been told. You were raised to read guilt as a moral compass, feel bad, therefore did wrong. But guilt is not a compass, it is an invoice. And the people who benefit from you paying it have every reason to keep telling you it is a compass. There is a sentence the men who have seen this clearly say to themselves, and I want you to hear it now, early, before you have earned it, so it has time to settle. What I close, I will not reopen to guilt. Hold that. We will come back to it twice more, and the second time it will mean more than it does now. Now I can bring in the man whose name is on this video, because you have felt the wound long enough to receive him as a relief instead of a lecture. 500 years ago, in a chapter most people skip, Niccolo Machiavelli sat down to answer a question that sounds like it has nothing to do with your life and has everything to do with it. The question was whether a ruler should build fortresses, walls, visible defenses, and his answer is the spine of everything you are about to learn. Machiavelli's conclusion was not what you would expect from the man history paints as cold. He did not say, build the biggest wall. He observed something far more dangerous. A visible fortress, he noticed, does two things at once. It tells your enemies exactly where you are weak enough to need protecting, and it tells them precisely what to lay siege to. The wall everyone can see is the wall everyone plans against. The fortress announces the fear that built it. And a ruler who relies on the announcement of his defenses, Machiavelli warned, has already shown the world the one thing he most needed to keep hidden, that he believed he could be reached. Read that again, because it is naming something you have done your entire life. Every time you announced a boundary, I'm really going to start saying no more. I need you to respect my time. Things are going to be different from now on. You built a visible fortress. You showed everyone exactly where the wall was, which meant you showed them exactly where to push. The announcement was not strength. The announcement was the fear that you would not be able to hold the line unless you warned everyone first. And the people around you heard it for what it was. They heard a man asking permission to have a perimeter, so they denied it, the way they always had, and you backed down, the way you always had. and the door stayed open, only now everyone knew you had thought about closing it and lacked the nerve. This is the cold awakening's name for the structure underneath all of it, the perimeter. Not a boundary in the soft, modern sense, a thing you negotiate and feel and process. The perimeter is the line that defines where you end and the demands of other people begin. Most men do not have one. They have a suggestion. They have a hope. They have a vague internal sense that they would like to be taken advantage of less, which they have never once translated into an actual edge that an actual person would hit. And the law that governs the perimeter, the law Machiavelli buried in a chapter about walls, is what we call the law of the closed door. A door that works does not announce itself. It does not explain itself. It closes, and the closing is the entire message. Forget Machiavelli for a moment. Forget the fortresses and the 500 years. This is what the law looks like in your life tomorrow morning. The phone is going to light up with a name. You already know whose. And in the half second before you answer, you are going to feel the whole machine engage, the drop in your stomach, the reason assembling itself, the yes forming before you have decided anything. That half second is the perimeter, and right now it has no door. We are going to install one. 7 times. Each rule is one hinge. Rule 1. The perimeter is not built by announcing it. It is built by holding it once, in silence. This is where almost every man fails before he begins, because he believes the boundary is a conversation. He rehearses the speech. He waits for the right moment to sit the person down and explain that things are going to change. And in the rehearsing and the waiting and the explaining, he has already surrendered the only power the perimeter ever had, the power of the fact that does not ask. The animal does not call a meeting about its territory. The fortress that survives is the one nobody knew to besiege. You do not build a perimeter by telling people it exists. You build it the first time you simply do not answer, do not attend, do not absorb, and offer not one word of explanation afterward. The silence is not rudeness. The silence is the architecture. The moment you explain, you convert the wall back into a door and hand the other person the key, your reason, which they will spend the rest of the relationship picking. A man who calls a meeting to announce his wall has not built a wall. He has drawn a map of where the wall will be, handed it to the people most likely to climb it, and asked them to wait politely while he lays the first brick. Rule 2. The people closest to you priced you years ago, and they set the price low on purpose. There is a reason a stranger will sometimes treat you with more respect than the people who have known you your whole life, and it is not an accident, and it is not affection. A stranger meets the man you are right now, the one who has accumulated whatever you have accumulated, learned whatever you have learned, become whatever you have become. The people who have known you longest are not negotiating with that man. They are negotiating with the boy they met, the version of you that was weakest, the you that could be talked into anything for the price of approval. And they have a quiet, mostly unconscious interest in keeping that price exactly where it was set, because the old price is the one that benefits them. Every time you try to charge more respect, more reciprocity, more distance, they experience it as you betraying a deal you never knowingly signed. The deal was struck when you were too young to read the terms. They are simply enforcing it. Everyone in the world updates your price except the people who have known you the longest. To them, you will always be on the clearance rack, and they will be genuinely offended the day you try to ring yourself up at full value. Rule 3. No is a complete sentence, and the explanation is where you hand over the map. You do not say no. You have never said no in your life. What you say is, no comma, because. And the everything after the because is the most valuable intelligence you produce. And you give it away for free to people who will weaponize it within the hour. The reason is the map. When you tell your friend you cannot help him move because you are tired, you have just told him that the correct counter is to insist you are not that tired. When you tell your family you cannot make the event because of work, you have told them the correct counter is to find a version of the event that fits around your work. The explanation does not soften the no. The explanation reopens the negotiation you were trying to end, on terms you just handed to the other side. A no that comes with a reason is not a refusal, it is an offer to be talked out of it. The because is the crack in the wall. You hand it over thinking it is good manners, and then you spend the next 10 years wondering why every single person pushes on the exact same spot, never realizing you are the one who painted the target. Rule 4. Access is not love. It is the thing love is constantly mistaken for. This is the one that costs men the most, because it asks them to look at the relationships they are proudest of and consider that the closeness they feel might be nothing more than the frictionlessness of a door that never closes. You believe you are loved by the people who can reach you anytime, but reachability is not the same file as value. The most reached for man in a family is very often the least respected one everyone calls because he will always pick up, never because they want his counsel. He has confused being depended upon with being desired, and they are different conditions with different futures. The man who is desired is sought. The man who is merely available is used, then quietly resented for the very availability that was supposed to make him indispensable. Indispensable and valued are not synonyms. Ask anyone who was made redundant the week after a record year. Here is the cold test of it. They will cry harder at the funeral of the man who entertained them than the man who carried them. The carried man was load-bearing, and you do not weep for a beam, you just notice the ceiling is lower now, and you adjust, and you forget. Nobody lights a candle for furniture. We are halfway, and this is the position from which I want you to look back at the 4 rules so far, because there is a pattern underneath them you may not have seen yet. Every one of them is a piece of conventional wisdom you were handed without a receipt. Be there for your family. Be a good friend, explain yourself, be reasonable, be a team player. And here is the question the cold awakening teaches you to ask about every rule you were ever given. The question that will outlive this video and reorganize how you hear advice for the rest of your life. Take the rule you most believe: family comes first. Now ask who benefits from you believing that, with no conditions attached, no upper limit, no clause that protects you, not you. The answer is never you. The answer is the people who learned they could call at any hour and be answered. The answer is whoever wrote the version of the rule you were handed and what they needed you to believe in order to keep the door open. Trace every rule back to who profits from your obedience to it, and you will find that the rules demanding the most from you were authored almost without exception by the people with the most to gain from your compliance. That is the tool. Carry it out of here. Now back to the hinges. Rule 5. A friendship that only moves when you move. It was never a friendship. It was logistics. Run the audit and it will frighten you, which is why most men never run it. Take the men you call your closest friends and ask a single question of each. When was the last time this relationship moved without me being the one to move it? Who called whom? Who organized the last meeting? Who drove? Who carried the thread forward when you stopped pushing? For a number of the men in your life, the honest answer is that it has not moved on its own in years, because It was never a mutual thing held up by two men. It was a thing held up by you while another man stood near it and enjoyed the warmth. Most men never run this audit, and the reason is not laziness. It is fear, because some part of him already suspects the answer. And a suspected friend is more comfortable to keep than a confirmed acquaintance. The withdrawal is not cruelty. It is the only instrument that produces the truth. Stop carrying it, and within about a month the world sorts itself into two groups for you, free of charge. The men who call to ask where you went, and the men who only noticed you were gone because the lift stopped showing up. Rule 6. At work, we're a team, is the phrase that comes just before the theft. Listen for it now that you know. The colleague who invokes the team at the precise moment something needs doing that will not have his name on it. We're all in this together. Let's not worry about who did what. It's a team effort. Every one of these is a phrase designed to dissolve the boundary between your contribution and the collective. And the collective, when the credit is finally distributed, has a way of resolving back into a single person, and it is rarely you. Generosity with your work is not collegial. In a system that runs on attribution, generosity with your work is just the slow donation of your career to men who understood, earlier than you did, that visible contribution and credited contribution are entirely different things. You kept doing the work because the work was real and you are not lazy. They kept taking the credit because the credit was the only part that was ever counted. There is no I in team is the only sentence in the English language that is always, without fail, spoken by the man who is about to put his I in your work. Watch his mouth form the word we. His hands are already on the thing you made. Notice where you are now. You came into this video carrying a vague, tired sense that you were giving too much. You are leaving this section with a map of exactly who, exactly how, and exactly why. That is the difference between feeling used and seeing the architecture. Feeling used keeps you up at night. Seeing the architecture lets you close the door. And the door is what the 7th rule is about, the rule I told you to wait for, the rule that costs. Here is where the diagnosis ends and the operation begins. Everything until now was learning to see the door. What comes next is learning to close it, and closing it is the part most men will not do, because closing it costs them something they have been protecting their entire lives more carefully than they ever protected their time, their money, or their peace. So before the last rule, the audit. If you have recognized yourself anywhere in this, if you have felt the drop in your stomach at the name on the phone, if you have heard your own voice in the no comma because, if you have run the friendship audit in your head and not liked the answer, type one word below. Type closed, not as a comment, as a contract with yourself. The men who type it have decided the door has a lock now. The men who scroll past it are deciding to keep paying the old price. One word. Closed. Now the weapon. From here, everything is in your hands. In the second person, because from here, it is no longer description. It is instruction. You will stop announcing. The next time you decide not to do something, you will simply not do it, and you will let the silence carry the message that no speech could. You will feel the pull. To explain, the pull is the old programming, the alarm system testing whether the door still opens. You will not answer the alarm. You will let it ring until it stops, because alarms that summon no response eventually stop being armed. You will stop reasoning out loud. When the no is required, the no is the whole sentence. You will not hand over the map. You will watch what happens when you offer no foothold And what happens is this. The people who respected you find the closed door entirely reasonable and move on. And the people who were extracting from you escalate, because the closed door has interrupted a supply they had come to depend on. The escalation is not a sign you did something wrong. The escalation is the receipt. It tells you exactly how much they were taking, measured by how loudly they protest the loss of it. You will run the audits and act on what they show you. You will stop carrying the friendships that only move when you move them. Let the ones that fall away, and not chase them, because a thing that required your constant force to stay upright was never going to stand. And where the gap between the work you do and the credit you receive is largest, you will quietly stop being the man who closes it for free. But before you turn the lock for the first time, I am going to hold you at the threshold, because there is a test you have to pass to earn the right to everything that follows, and it is the same test from the start of this video, returned now with teeth. The closed door is power only if you can stand on the other side of one. Here is how you know whether the perimeter you are about to build is strength or just appetite wearing its coat. When a no is pointed back at you, when your friend does not pick up, when your colleague declines the favor, when the woman or the brother or the father holds a line against you and offers you not one word of explanation, watch what happens in your chest. The man who feels that as reasonable, who grants the other person the exact silence he demands for himself, has built a real perimeter. The man who feels it as betrayal, who needs to know why, who cannot rest until the closed door pointed at him, is pried back open. That man never had a perimeter. He had a sense of entitlement with good lighting. He was not strong, he was just winning, and he mistook the winning for strength. And the first no he could not overrule revealed the whole thing. So the rule underneath the rules is this: you only get to close doors you would respect closed in your own face. Apply it before you turn a single lock. If you cannot take the no, you have not earned the right to give it. The weak man wants asymmetry, his walls high, everyone else's low. The strong man wants the same law to apply to him that he applies to the world, and he is the first to bow to it. That is not softness. That is the only thing that separates a man with a perimeter from a tyrant with a grudge. And here is the second place I want your hands on the keyboard, because this one is not a word, it is a story. If you have ever watched yourself become a stranger to someone, a friend who slowly turned into a creditor, a family member whose love had conditions you only saw when you tried to test them, a colleague who was warm right up until the day you stopped being useful, write what happened. Not for me. For the man scrolling this comment section right now, who is about to close his first door and needs to know he is not the first one to feel the guilt and do it anyway. Now, the seventh rule, the one I made you wait for. You will have to become, to a few people, the villain in a story you know is false, and you will have to let that story stand uncorrected. This is the cost. And this is why almost no man pays it. When you finally close the door, when you stop answering, stop carrying, stop donating, the people who were extracting from you will not say he found his perimeter. They cannot say that, because to say it would be to admit what they were doing. So they will tell a different story. He changed. He got cold. He thinks he is better than us now. He abandoned me when I needed him. And that story will travel, and it will reach people you care about. And every instinct you have will scream at you to correct the record, to explain, to defend, to make them understand that you are not the villain they are describing. And the moment you do, the door is open again. Because correcting the story is reopening the negotiation. It is the explanation from Rule 3, returning in its most seductive form, not "let me tell you why I said no," but "let me tell you why I am not a bad man." Same map, same key. Handed over for the same reason, the unbearable feeling of being misread by people whose reading of you was always self-serving. The final perimeter is not built against the people who take from you. It is built against your own need to be understood by them. The strongest thing a man ever does is let a false story about himself stand, told by people who needed him to be available, and refuse to spend a single word buying back a reputation with the very people who were charging him for it. The fortress Machiavelli admired most was never the one with the highest wall. It was the one the enemy did not know was a fortress, the position so quietly held that no one thought to lay siege to it. Let them tell their story. The man who refuses to defend himself against a lie told by people who profited from his obedience has built the one wall that cannot be breached, because there is no longer any door for them to push on. They are pushing on stone and calling the stone cruel, and the stone does not answer. And a strange thing happens to the man who can be called the villain and not flinch. The people whose opinion was ever worth having watch him absorb it without defense, and they understand everything they need to know. The truth is loudest in the mouth of the man who refuses to say it. This is the sentence I want you to carry out of here, the one that holds all 7 rules in a single line. You heard it once already, near the start, before you had earned it. You have earned it now. What I close, I will not reopen to guilt. That is the whole law, not set boundaries, not learn to say no. Those are the soft, announced, visible fortress versions that everyone teaches and no one can hold. The law of the closed door is colder and simpler and far harder. You close, and you do not reopen, not to the call, not to the reason, not to the guilt, and not to the false story they will tell to try to make you open it again. The closing is the message. The silence is the wall, and the refusal to defend yourself is the part that makes it permanent. So here is the affirmation, and here is where I ask you to claim it. There is one sentence the men who actually hold the line are already saying to themselves. In the half second before the name on the phone gets an answer, it has always received and will not receive this time. What I close, I will not reopen to guilt. Type it in the comments if it has already become true for you. Type it if you intend to make it true. The men who type it have stopped asking permission to have a perimeter. The men who scroll past it will close a door this week and reopen it by Sunday, and they will call the reopening kindness, and the door will go on costing them everything it has always cost. Subscribe if you intend to keep waking up. Not because the algorithm needs it, because the man who watches this once and disappears is the same man who, 6 months from now, will be standing in front of the same open door, feeling the same drop in the same stomach, having forgotten he was ever shown the lock. The men who stay are the ones who do not let the seeing slip away from them. And there is a video on this channel about why powerful men refuse to be seen, the 8 laws the wealthy inherit, and the rest of us were never handed. Watch it next. The closed door is how you stop them taking from you. Refusing to be seen is how you stop them ever knowing what you have that is worth taking. One controls what they can reach, the other controls what they can read. The two lock into place when they sit together. You came in here calling it closeness, calling it loyalty, calling it being a good man. You are leaving knowing it was access, and knowing exactly where the lock is, and knowing the price of turning it. The door was always yours to close. Nobody told you that, because nobody in your life had any reason to. Now you know. Close it, and do not explain. and do not reopen it to the guilt, or the story, or the name lighting up the phone. This is your cold awakening,